Brett Favre, one of the first quarterbacks many young football fans think of when it comes to the Green Bay Packers. Pro Football Hall of Famer, cult icon in Green Bay. But his career started in Atlanta with the Atlanta Falcons. In hindsight, the Falcons are considered fools for trading him after his rookie season, as Favre went on to become one of the all-time greats, while the Falcons have been relatively mediocre. Were the Falcons just not the right fit, or did they make a huge mistake? I'll uncover it.
Fasten your seatbelts for the realest Eagles and Sixers YouTuber! One who plays no clickbait and gets to the point! The myth, the legend, Nicky Steez! Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps things real. I'm simply statue, think they slate, dropping unrealistic man, 2K takes for the clip. Even though cats like that get views closer to the millie, never hear me preach, look on to Philly. Before you watch the Eagles all the way through the early 22, authentic talk, forget what others do. Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps things real. The 24/7, 365 way. Sports content for the reals that feel the day.
Brett Favre is synonymous for being one of the all-time great NFL quarterbacks. We all know his journey started on the left in Atlanta, where he got drafted, where the commissioner mispronounced his last name. But then it's most famous for where he ended on the right in Green Bay. As a member of the Green Bay Packers, during that time, he won a Super Bowl as a starter, played in 2, won 3 consecutive NFL MVPs during the 90s. Throughout his NFL career, made 11 total Pro Bowls, had his jersey retired by the Green Bay Packers, at one point led for the most passing yards in NFL history at the time of his retirement. Truly a first ballot Hall of Famer, which he was when he was inducted in 2016 NFL Hall from the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But it's often looked back as the common perspective that the Atlanta Falcons made a huge mistake. Let's talk about it. His time in Atlanta started in 1991 during his rookie season. During there, Jerry Glanville was the coach of the Falcons. At the time, they had a young Deion Sanders, Andre Rison to keep them relevant. And during that season, they actually went 10-6 and made the playoffs with Jerry Glanville, who was the Houston Oilers head coach in the late 80s, experienced regular season success with Warren Moon, Earl Campbell, Robert Brazil and company. And now he was the Atlanta Falcons head coach, and it looked like he was starting to do more of the same, with, at the time, starting quarterback Chris Miller. What's led to the Falcons' decision ultimately to cut him and trade him to Green Bay, where they got a first-round pick in return, was Jerry Glanville did not like Brett Favre's attitude. He didn't think he was serious about the game of football. He saw Favre as the guy that just wanted to get paid and live a VIP lifestyle, mainly because, as pointed out on the top 5 reasons you can't blame the Atlanta Falcons for trading Brett Favre. Now, this was a show that was done on ESPN Classic back in the mid-2000s. This episode was one of the main ones. I skimmed through this episode, and it got me thinking about it. Were the Atlanta Falcons actually right to trade him, despite the fact that Favre went on to greater success in Green Bay? Some of the reasons brought up are actually pretty convincing. Like I said, the party lifestyle. Favre in Atlanta, where you had a lot of nightclubs, a lot of expensive places to go to, Favre was often out partying, showing more interest in that lifestyle than he was being a football player, especially being that they already had Chris Miller at the quarterback, who at the time had a Pro Bowl season, and it looked like he might be the guy for the future. He seemed like the right fit, and he seemed to click well with the head coach, Jerry Glanville. And you still had Deion and Andre Rison at the time. So you looked like you had potential. While meanwhile, Brett Favre at the time was showing more interest in partying and living a bachelor lifestyle than he was actually dedicating himself to the game of football. And hence led the decision to trade him to Green Bay, a team that was desperate for a quarterback, had been for years post-Lombardi, post-Star, following both those guys departing. And the Green Bay Packers, a desperate organization, took a chance on Favre. And it ultimately paid off with him over there. Whereas Atlanta has had in the time since a relatively mediocre run. They made a Super Bowl in the 98 season but got curb stomped by the Denver Broncos. They did trade up for the number 1 pick a few years later in 2001, acquired Michael Vick, who was the perfect fit in Atlanta. It was all going it was on the field. They experienced some success. They had a few shortcomings on the field with a few 8-8 seasons, but overall they had some playoff success, and there was still a chance that they could get back into contention until the Michael Vick scandal. But while that was going on, Brett Favre was in Green Bay winning Super Bowls, regular season MVPs. Packers were always in the mix every year, whereas the Falcons were up and down. But I understand looking back on it why the Falcons did it. Here's my verdict. My verdict is the Green Bay Packers were the right fit for Brett Favre. Yes, I know it's easy in hindsight to bash the Falcons, but you got to realize when you consider Brett Favre didn't really fit in with Atlanta. It was a place where he spent more time in trouble partying, it's interesting because I know this ties into another subject, but me and my mom talked about the 04 draft class. She's a Giants fan, actually. But I brought up that Roethlisberger was initially going to go to the Giants. She said, actually, the best thing for him was Pittsburgh, because if he would have been in the New York area, he would have been constantly getting in trouble. That's kind of what was happening Brett Favre's rookie season. And considering he got addicted to Vicodin during his time with the Packers and went through a drug addiction, it was actually better that you got Favre, who dealt with demons in Green Bay, away from Atlanta, where there was more alcohol, more drugs around, which could have further fueled his lifestyle. He could have been another Johnny Manziel had he stayed on the Atlanta Falcons roster. The best thing for him, I think, was going to Green Bay, where there weren't all these nightclubs. There weren't all these expensive places to go to. There really wasn't a lot in Green Bay. So it was actually perfect for Favre to help keep him out of trouble off the field. And without all those places to go to, Favre could actually focus in on football and hone his craft. And that's why I feel Green Bay was the better fit for him. And that kind of ties into the whole Roethlisberger thing. Pittsburgh was a better place for him, where there really weren't that many expensive places to go to. There weren't a lot of clubs. Not that Big Ben didn't go to them, but in Pittsburgh, his options were limited. Whereas if he had been in East Rutherford, New York area, he'd have been all over the nightclub scene, getting in trouble left and right. Even more so than he ended up doing. Same thing with Brett Favre. So at Green Bay, he actually could focus more on football, and that's what led to him getting the starting role, him becoming the face of the Packers franchise, right there. So I think that it really comes down to that decision. I think it was just that Green Bay was the better fit for him. Ultimately, the Falcons, just the culture in Atlanta, didn't really seem like it fit Brett Favre's personality either. You think Brett Favre is more that country boy. Green Bay was the much better fit for him. And plus, eventually, you got Mike Holmgren became the head coach. You had Reggie White join the team. You had Don Beebe. You had Leroy Butler. You had a lot of, Antonio Friedman. A lot of players that fit well and played. Donald Driver. All these guys played well with Favre and fit in Green Bay. So ultimately, Green Bay was the better fit than Atlanta. So I stand firm in saying that the Atlanta Falcons were right for trading Brett Favre, because they were stuck in a lose-lose situation. If you keep him, he's not really going to help you out. But if you got rid of him, you trade him to a place where he could be a better fit. But what were you going to do? Keep a guy that didn't fit? I understand where the Falcons were coming from. Even though it backfired for them, it looks bad in the long term. At the time, you got to think it made sense. He wasn't going to go anywhere in Atlanta. It was just better to trade him to Green Bay, and it worked out best for the Packers. For the Falcons, it didn't work, but even if they kept him, it wasn't going to work anyway. He wasn't going to get his opportunity to start. He was going to be more caught up in the party lifestyle, living it up, and getting in a lot of trouble, basically. So, yeah, ultimately, I think the Falcons made the right decision, and Brett Favre should be thankful for it. That's my final verdict on it. You guys comment, let me know what you think. And until next time, it's your boy Nicky Steez signing off.